Well, hello there guys and girls, my name's Mikey, welcome back to my room. It's time for another tutorial. So yeah, today we're going to be learning how to map the features onto your anime and manga faces when you're drawing the head from different angles. Essentially a head tutorial that's going to focus on how we get the placement for your character's features in these different ways whilst keeping your character looking fairly consistent. Now, I hope you guys are subscribed to the channel. If not, click that button right down there somewhere because there's loads of tutorials for anime and manga design, as well as the fact we're going to be harking back to some of those basics. We've talked about how to draw a head before from kind of basic shapes and different angles, and this is really going to help us focus this time on drawing the nose as well. We've done about the eyes, we've done about the mouths and lips recently, and you guys have been asking for a tutorial on how to draw the nose to your anime and manga characters, what we're kind of showing with those lines and what we're leaving out. So I've got a super cheap mechanical pencil, I've got a load of sheets of printer paper laid down, quite a few, so that I have a relatively soft surface, and of course I've got a rubber, just in case there's any mistakes. Well, you guys call it an eraser, we call it a rubber, but whichever type of mistake, the mistake today or the one in 9 months, either's absolutely fine. I also sometimes have a spare bit of paper to rest my hand on whilst I'm working so that the greases and natural oils from my hand, even if they're clean, won't just affect the paper below. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to mapping out the head shape is firstly start off fairly light and fairly loose. I'm going to probably work a little bit darker than normal just so that what I do ends up relatively clear on the camera for you guys. But basically we're going to start off our head by loosely roughing out a circular shape. This is going to be the majority of the head of our character, like so. And we're going to think about a center line, which is the middle of the face line and where that's going to be aimed. And that helps us understand the direction of the face. So my center line for this face is going to be, let's just say, off to the left, somewhere down here like this. And what you can do is imagine that this line actually goes over the top curve of this sphere and then drops down to be the rest of the face. It might stop only just off here somewhere. And also that depending on the angle of your character, you're going to have a cross section for your sphere as well, and that's going to be the brow line of your character. So I'm going to go around about here, and there we've kind of got an idea of a sphere and a brow. And what we do then is we flatten off the side of this sphere, this building block, because the human head is a little bit longer than it is wide. So if I just imagine that this edge has been flattened off all of a sudden, like this, now this is a straight line across this surface. You can imagine a straight line down the edge there going over the top of the head, and that helps me understand that I'm probably going to kind of make a jawline that follows up along here and goes up towards this side for this character. That's roughly going to be the shape of the face there, and we're going to do the same on the other side. Because we know our brow line's up here, we tend to dip into the face a little bit where the eyes will probably be, before then bumping out slightly for the cheek and dipping in again towards the jaw. So it's kind of in round the eye, out round the cheek, and then smoother, longer, firmer, but also a little bit in down towards that chin. So that is very loosely how we might kind of map up the shape of this head. I'm going to do 2 more, and then we're going to come back to each one and put the features in and talk about mapping. So again, I'm going to go up here just so that there's space and get another good loose circular shape in. And again, I'm keeping it relatively light now, but don't worry, I'm going to go over these lines in just a moment a bit firmer and a bit more darkly. This one is going to come maybe somewhere down like this. So I'm going to imagine that the top of the head is mapping over this circle like so. I've got that center line in, I like where that sits, the chin's about there. It does mean that in this example I think the top of our head is again tilted ever so slightly downwards, ever so slightly. So I'm going to put a center line through there, the axis. I'm going to flatten off, now that I know where the front is, the side of this whole situation by imagining that that's all flattened out there, just like so. Here we go over the top center, and again I'm just going to come down from here and just sweep in a line very loosely that's going to be vaguely, I think, for this character where the chin's going to be. And then because we're a little bit more front on, we're going to accentuate this curving line a little bit more. So we're out for the forehead, sure, over the brow line. This is the eyebrow area that sits above the eye, so it's sticking out from your head. We're going to go in a little bit where the eye line might be, vaguely about there. We're going to go out a bit for where the cheek might be, and then we're going to sweep in again for that jaw. And this doesn't have to be perfect. This is just a very loose guide for what we're up to, and we can always come back and work that in. And then we're going to do just one more as well, really quickly. Let's go and get a really low angle on this one, shall we? So again, we're going to go in with our big loose circle, and I'm keeping this loose and quick because it really helps with the initial stage of your character to be loose, be quick, get that rough shape in. Then once you've got that gesture, that form, or that direction of the head, then you can go in and start to nail it down and get really tight. But we're going to go light and loose for the moment. This head is looking up, so I'm going to go right over the top here, and imagine that jawline is going to sit somewhere around about here. It's a raised chin. So this means for this one, it's a little bit more interesting. The brow of this character is going to be something like this, right over to the top, which means with this being our center line over here, I'm probably going to flatten off the side of this as a big zone around about here, like this in fact, before it curves over the top. And that means that our jawline for this character is probably going to be kind of up. If anything, it's going to sweep out like this and then just sweep up to kind of meet that zone in there, like so. A little bit more difficult to deal with, but we're going to come back, we're going to map it all in. And again, on this edge, I'm going to imagine things go in a little bit for where the eyes are, but they're going to bump out for the cheek. And because of the angle, all of this is really going to be bumping out over to the left. So we're going to sweep out over here maybe for the cheek, still drop it in a little bit for where it comes to meet the chin, something like so. So we've got these very loose kind of directions of faces going on. I'm just going to get this piece of paper out so that I'm not smudging everything that I'm up to. And imagine that where the jaw meets the head here is also on the other side where the back of the neck's going to be. So I'm going to create a bit of a neckline that comes off of this character here, and a little bit just down here as well, just to show that this head is kind of mounted to something. This might be a bit of a side-on pose for a character, where this is the shoulder and the rest sweeps off like that, but we're not going to focus there too much. And on this character here, we're now going to actually map in these features. So the first thing we usually start with are the eyes. And what you want to remember is that the eyes aren't sticking right out on the front of the face, they're recessed, they're inside a bit. So I like to get that far eye in, and I'm just going to do a kind of elliptical curve that for me just shows the front edge of the eye. Now what an eye is obviously a sphere that's sitting behind the surface of the head, and we're just mapping the outer edge, which is why I kind of keep this as a general kind of curve, a bit of an loose almond shape would probably best describe it. And then the next eye I like to pop in over to the right. You need to remember that the side of the face is right down here, so you're not going to stick it all the way over here, but you are going to pop that eye around about here or so as well, just to get that kind of shape, that design in for this character. And again, I'm just using that rough almond shape, but what I'm really going to do is understand the form of that eye when it comes to putting some final lines on and marking out as eyelashes and so on. But that's going to do for now. Remember, you've got about an eye's gap between the two eyes of your character, but when it's a face on an angle, that's a little bit harder to describe. And the main important bit is the ridge of this nose and what's going on. So if you imagine up above the eye, around about here, we've got the ridge of the brow. So that's going to be vaguely where an eyebrow might sit here. And also on this side of the character, it sticks out and forward. The ridge of the brow is going to be around about here as well. So it sticks out here and sticks out here above the eye. And the nose is also going to follow this kind of curve. So it starts off at the top, of course. It comes in to the face on this inward curve here, and then it pops out to around about here for our character. There's the underside edge of the nose. You can also, if you want, draw in the top edge as well, just to show where it's going in like that. So it curves up and along like so, and then a bit further down you've got the mouth of your character. So from where the tip of the nose is to the bottom of the chin, the middle of the mouth is going to sit just above that halfway point, somewhere between half and a third. And again, I'm just going to put that in as a fairly general shape, a little bit of tuck around the edge, where it folds into the cheek, a little bit of bump over the front of the lip, tuck down the other side, and then just a little bit of a shadow line just underneath like so. And that's very basically how we're going to pop things in. You can of course just show that there's pupils in this character. We'll have them looking off maybe to the left. And again, when we get the eyelashes and brows in, that's going to really help. But remember that as you go over the curve of the face, this nose line sweeps in and then sweeps out. The point of the nose is basically about halfway between the brow line and the bottom of the chin. So that's this curve here and the bottom, and it sweeps out and comes back in before coming out again over that lip area. So we might as well just go in. You can imagine a cheeky nostril around about there. So if we do a very similar thing up here on our center one, we're going to go right up here and imagine that, okay, under the brow of this character, I'm going to have an eye that's sitting around about here. I'm going to have another one that's sitting just on the inside edge around about here like so. I've got the brow line being a little bit further up here like this, and sticking out again like this because of the angle of the face. And then up with this brow line where the front of the forehead goes in, we've got that curve of the nose. So this one's going to sweep down, it's going to sweep out, and that point again about halfway down around about here. So this is just going to sweep out to the point of the nose, sweep back on the inside edge, up, out, and in. And then of course again, going to have the mouth around about here, so maybe just a little bit open this time, top of the lip, bottom of the lip. And then on this character here, we're going to imagine everything's set quite back in. Now remember, because the eyes are further in but the head's tilted back, the eyes are going to be further in this direction, into the face. So on this eye, I might imagine that we're seeing all of the brow underside here, which means this eye is probably going to map somewhere around about here. And we've got this eye under that brow also somewhere around about here, because we're looking at the underside of a brow that's all coming up on this side here. So again, that means in this example, this nose curve that goes in is great, but that's actually going to be hooking up around about here because everything's going up the face as it tilts back, and probably hooking back around about here. So this is often a bit tough to map out when you're thinking of your characters looking upward, but very important, curving down, pointing up, and then going down and back. And you can imagine that maybe you're getting a bit of the other edge of nostril there. Maybe you've got the nostril for this character already drawn in somewhere around about there. And it means that the lips as well, everything's just sliding up that face. So we might have a bit of a bump here, but the mouth is mapping over a curve. So it's going to go down a little bit, even if it's a smiling feature by hooking up the edges on either side. The top of the lip protrudes up the top there, and the bottom of the lip of course is protruding out as well. You still get a nice bit of shadow for this character there. And when it comes to going around these guys, after we've very loosely got those features in, this is where we now get to be a little bit harder with those lines. So this is where it's probably going to pick up very, very nicely. I've probably set the brightness and contrast up for most of this, and now I'm going to just dive in with something a little bit firmer. So let's go over here, and let's imagine with this character, we're going to just really highlight the underside of that nose, make that a nice dark line for you all, and then it's just going to thin out as it goes up that curve. I'm going to darken out up the top, and I'm going to sweep this line up and let this line essentially meet with the eyebrow of this character. So I'm going to fill that in relatively dark, and then I'm going to have the eye shape mapped in a little bit better by showing the fact that we've got the curve here, and then the rest is all going to be covered in loads of eyelash, which is probably going to shape up and around on this side like so, come off the bottom on this side as well before meeting around and in. There's loads of construction lines in here, I appreciate, but if you imagine that there's also like a fold of the eye that comes up there, and then on this side I'm going to do something very similar. I like this curve because we're seeing the edge of the sphere, the surface which is the eye itself. Just going to break the nib off the lead to make it sharp again, and then we're going to just sweep in with this whole eye area. That's going to be the top where I've got all of the eyelashes in this occasion sticking out and sticking up and sticking forward and so on. And then that underside edge as well, it's probably going to sweep up relatively tightly to give me all of the eyelash down on this side, and also up on this edge where it folds in. And thinking about this brow line, I know that the eyebrow of this character is going to sit somewhere on top of this curve, right up here, and curving its way in and across. So we're using this kind of facial topography essentially, where we understand, okay, the brows pop forward, the eyes pop in, which means this is all kind of curving inward in this direction. But then we've got the eyes themselves, which are then going to just be their own spherical surface, and then the cheeks kind of come out from there. As the nose makes its way down here, we're going to go back down to the lips on this part. Not going to worry too much about the details here because we've covered them in the previous tutorial, so hopefully you guys know what's going on. And then we're just going to use this topography to get that outside edge of the face. We're going to come in near the eye, going to come down a little bit, and then I'm going to just come out very gently with the curve of that cheek, like so. And then I'm going to sweep that in nice and convex as it goes towards the chin, sweeping in with that curve, then curving round to get that chin line before we then sweep up. And I'm just going to get the paper around this side so I can get a nice good line for sweeping up that jaw, like so, and then curving up. And what that leaves us with this type of character really is a bit of a space that's going to be right up here. And wherever you get this cross section, this is basically where you're going to be popping the ear of your character. We're not going to worry too much in detail, but just know you can kind of basically pop in a rough kind of elliptical shape. It's kind of ellipse built off of a couple of structural forms. But basically, just imagine that is your character's ear, and that's where you're going to get all of those kind of details sit. So that's basically what I'm going to do now for the next two characters. I'm going to do it in time lapse. I'm going to just firm up these lines using the construction and just put some features on each of these. Okay, so as we jump into some time lapse part of this, you'll notice that what I'm really doing is working from those loosely mapped areas, including the brow line to be the eyebrows, or that's where they're going to sit, protruding forward on the face, i.e. a little bit further out to the left with a character that's facing to the left, or a little bit further up for a character that's looking upward. I've got the eyes mapped in, and I'm really refining the shape now by putting on the eyelashes, working out the shape of the pupils to give an indication that it's still all on a curved surface, and getting the undercurve in as well. And when it comes to the hook and curve of the nose, you'll notice that my weightiest line is actually on the underside edge. It's not over the top. Putting in the mouth is something that we've done for other tutorials. However, when it came to the faces on the top and on the right, what I'd done is I'd started off with the nearest eye again, given that some shape and definition, very common to kind of an anime style. And then I just realized that because of the size of the eye, it really meant that the eye on the right hand side, when we talk about the middle face, needed to be moved further across, because I hadn't quite allowed for enough of a space in between them to create the correct scales really for a common face. Now what I could have done is just reduce the size of the eye on the left and kept it to scale, but really I wanted to expand the width of the face to make it slightly wider and cuter instead of a little bit too skinny and pinched. And this is a really important thing worth mentioning, which I'm kind of glad came up, which is that you can use these building blocks to start off what you're up to, absolutely, and they are going to be really helpful for mapping your face at different angles. But once you've got that down, don't get too locked in if you don't need to be. I stepped back, realized something wasn't quite working, and went in and kind of erased out, moved everything across a little bit on the right hand side and moved the mouth up and along with it to match, and that really just helped the image. If I'd stuck too solidly to my construction lines, I'd be a little bit too locked in, going down an unhelpful path. So at any stage, if you see an opportunity to make an improvement with your artwork and you're not, too burnt out by it already, then do dive in and have the freedom to kind of move things about of it. Using those building blocks and construction lines is a really useful start, but don't let it become like a prison that locks down your artwork either. Okay, so there we have them. Hopefully you found this to be useful, guys, to get a bit of a basic idea of using a sphere to build up the head, get your center line in for your character to understand the direction of the face, get a brow or eye line through the middle to understand the tilt, and put your features on top. With all of these, I've pretty much started by mapping out very loosely where the eyes might sit, then the brow line protruding above them, the curve and hook of the nose line beyond that, measuring down to the tip of the nose being about halfway between the middle of the eye and the chin, and then placing the mouth in last, because depending on the expression of your character, this might move around a lot. We've used this crotch section down the side to help us understand where the ears sit, and even when it comes to using this building block method, we're not scared to stop and maybe just expand on our design a bit. I've obviously moved these cheeks out a little bit here, taken this face to be a little bit further across and a little bit larger, because that actually works overall for the character design. Don't get too locked into the building block method. It's a useful guide, but don't let it become a cage. So I hope, guys, you found this to be useful when it comes to mapping the features of your characters when you're designing them at home. Let me know in the comments section how you guys got on, and of course what other tutorials you might want in the future. Now you notice I've moved this piece of paper over to the right just because sometimes the reflection of the light here is a bit funny, and it can mean that sometimes this side of the page isn't too clear, so hopefully you can definitely see what's going on with all of these faces. But also shoving them over here means I get to say a great big thank you to the list of people that are coming up on the left, and that is because although I love making these free tutorials for you guys, of course I'm not going to hold anything back. If you want to learn, I really want to help because I love to draw basically, and I want to share that with you guys. But the only reason I'm actually able to do this is thanks to the support of my Patreons. And so a great big thank you to ICZ, Michael M, The Cartoon Cynic, Raymond B, Trent P, Live on Kill, Ryder2KX, Michael B, Kurt D, Matt H, Ray C, The Clamps, Joe R, Kaidi Art, Mike, Michael S, Trent H, Adam D, Luke C, Wes B, Blue Mercy Studios, Julio Felix O, Savon S, Jamie, John Hall V, Carlos R, Gyro P, Simon B, Taylor S, Jake Y, John D, Furry Friend, Rory A, Homongchi L, Thomas C, Ollie, Cogleaf, Christian L, Gabriel R, Minion715, Adam T, Nikolai HH, and Zahaki. A great big thank you to you guys, and of course there are loads of people on Patreon beyond that list that make all of this possible, so I'm really thankful to a lot of you guys. And if you're ever curious, then click the link on screen or in the description below, because as well as the support, you get access to artwork sheets, final prints of artwork, alternative costume designs, and a whole lot more. So again, a great big thank you to you guys. I really hope you've found this tutorial to be useful for mapping out the features of your character's face. Get in the comments section and let me know what you think. Of course, make sure you've hit that subscribe button for more in the future, and I'll see you next time. Take care.